the important thing. So in most cases, okay, so obviously big disclaimer there. This is just my opinion. Okay, so we're going to start off with learning a little bit about the LAMP Words for Life, and then we'll get some questions from our wonderful helper, Christy. Okay, so this side over here is all of our pronouns, and that's kind of standard in AAC, actually. A lot of the robust systems pretty much have all of the pronouns down this side. So the way it's organized from there, that's where it gets a little different. So when we first were introduced to LAMP, I thought some of these symbols are really confusing. Like, why would the word come be a dog holding a newspaper? It seems like a very abstract symbol. So here's the deal. Don't get hung up on the symbols, first and foremost. But if I want to say come, I'm going to click that button and then go to this spot.
Come.
So that little spot there is called the action man. And so whenever the core word you're trying to say is an action, you're going to go to that same spot. So you're going to learn that motor planning for it. So if I want to say live, I'm going to go here.
Love,
I'm going to go here.
think.
So I'm always going to that same spot. So I'm learning that even before my screen opens up, that's where I need to go to say that basic form of that verb. Now, next to it in light green is all the conjugation of that verb. So now I want to say come.
Comes.
Or.
Coming.
Or.
Came.
Right? So same thing with.
Lives. Living. Lived.
And truthfully, technically, I think that should say lives instead of lives. But anyway, I digress. Okay, so then same thing. So all of these actions, if any of the core words, so the reason why you want to have about 100 is basically studies show that 50% of the words we say are within 100 core words. So you want quick access to those words. So your home page, if you are able to isolate and do about 100, that's ideal. So all of the most robust systems should give you that, around that amount. Unless, of course, this is an access issue, then there's other things at play. But this is for the kids who generally have pretty good a pretty good ability. And even if you can't isolate and differentiate 84 right off the bat, if you can isolate to that kind of accuracy or close to it, because you can work on that, and also you can get a key guard that will help with that. Okay, so does that make sense, Christy, what happens with the actions?
Yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
Okay, cool. So yes, exactly. If my word is an action, like find, to say it, oh, well, that's an example of when it isn't. Okay, so this is store. So there are a few exceptions, but for the most part, all
Make.
of them are going to go right there.
Need. Drink. Eat. Live.
Okay, so that's how we get our actions. And then I want to conjugate. So if I want to say following, what do you think I'm going to do? I'm going to go to this button, and I'm going to go right to where my ing verbs are. So bright green is action man, to say the action. Light green is conjugation of that basic verb. Okay? So the little bucket is basically the ideas behind it, right? Ing is the action of this stuff coming out of the bucket. Ed is it's already spilled, right? So that's kind of the ideas there. Now there are other ones. So like someone might look at this symbol, make, and think that's obscure as well. So part of that is because these shapes are also cookie cutters, are also related to religion. And the most important thing is that this just be a distinctive icon. So that these things actually do relate. When you get to the next page, you've got, okay, I customized some of this. There's extra religious stuff over here, but you would have some basic religion stuff, but you also have shapes up here. And you also have the word make and all the conjugations of that. So in short, the most important thing is that you kind of learn that that's where I'm going to go to get those words. So what you're learning is the unique and consistent motor plan to get to a word. And the most important thing is that this page look distinguishable, because the same way on our phones, we look at our apps and the logos and icons that go with our apps, we're not necessarily reading every single one. We're looking for that familiar color or that big P, which means Pandora or whatever it is. And that's what we want. We want that to sit in the same place, because what happens when our app logos move around? We get all confused, right? So that's why we don't want to be moving icons around. We don't want to change the size of our grid. We want to start with the largest grid we can handle, for sure. So that's where we're going to go to get all of the things to do with animals. And so that's why it's also a dog. So even though you might think, oh, come here, Spot, or, giving it that sort of thing, it has a multiple meaning to it, right? It also gives us all our animals. And speaking of that, so across the top, we've got all these different categories of animals. We also have in the orange box here, these are nouns. So this is going to be usually the most common noun to do with this category. So this is going to be animal. And if you want to ever put an S on a word, animals. Or you can go straight to animals in this situation right there. So that's what the orange is. The orange is generally where your nouns are. So again, let's talk a little bit more about why there's these somewhat strange icons, but they're very easily distinguished from each other. Like you'll notice they don't have like all of the yellow icons next to each other and such and such. So the same way with like eat and drink. So these are spread out versus being right next to each other. In some other categorical AAC systems, a lot of the associated words would be right next to each other. So if I wanted to find out, okay, you're going to the kitchen, did you want to eat or drink? And they hit find. And then they go back or, something, but you could pretty much be sure they were probably heading to eat. So that's the idea behind having these things separated. Same thing with, if you look up here, yes and no are separated versus being right next to each other, as in a lot of AAC they are. Same kind of thing. As you're working on this and building up speed, somebody might say, well, do you want to go somewhere? And they might just go some, or if they're getting closer to the no, the idea is that the reason why they're farther apart is so that you won't get a mispoke that also gives you the completely opposite meaning. So that's the idea with separating. And then good and bad are really far apart. Things like that. Out and in, up and down. These are spread out, but the idea is that you're going to learn where, if I want up, I go here. If I want down, I go here. And as you're communicating faster, if you're going this way and someone says, do you want to be upstairs or downstairs? So that's something that we've been working on. Do you want to be upstairs or downstairs right now? And so if he's heading this way and he hits up, then we're pretty sure it's up. But let's say he's headed over here and he hits what? Well, maybe he didn't hear what you had to say, but also he was probably going to down. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
That's very, very clever. And I didn't really think about that, but now that you're talking about it, it makes a lot of sense.
So the ones where it's right next to each other, you can't be sure, especially when a student is learning AAC, there's going to be more mispokes, and we want to have more of an idea. So having these things spread out across the board is actually, there's a method to the madness. It's not just, let's see how far apart we can put these two words, So that's that situation. Now these light blue ones here, that's where you're going to, on the home screen, this is going to take you to your keyboard. So the keyboard is great for what we call fringe words. So we want to get a really strong control of our core words, the ones we use a lot, our pronouns, our most common verbs or actions, our most common nouns. There aren't as many. Most of the core is going to be pronouns, verbs, adjectives, some adverbs, that sort of thing. So if you're looking for an adverb, generally it's going to be here. So there's a little airplane with pulling the letters ly behind it. And the word on that square is there. And somebody might be like, why in the world would an airplane pulling the letters ly tell me there? Well, certainly you can fly in an airplane and get there. But the reason is this spot does say there if you push that button. But let's say I put love. Lovely is here. So the adverb version of the word is going to be there. So if I say, let's say I say think, I don't know, brightly, interesting. Brightly. So it's going to be some sort of adverb, right? So if I say bad, badly. So good. Okay, so there is no goodly. So it's kind of interesting, but you can definitely like play around with it. But that airplane with the ly is because that becomes your adverb spot. So that's like the words obviously that become, so I'm just curious, like, so read doesn't have one. Time. So timely might actually be a good one you could actually put in there. Like that would make a lot of sense, right? So that's the idea, is that ly spot is where adverbs end up. Okay, so this light blue area here is your adjective space. So when it's not getting you to the keyboard, which right now it's getting you to the keyboard, right? For your fringe words. Now let's say I'm learning, I do need to every once in a while type a fringe word like puppy, even though puppy is probably somewhere else. Okay, puppy. I put all of this word prediction in because EJ is very purposeful with word prediction now, and it speeds him up when he's trying to communicate. But if your student is just starting with typing or using a screen for communication, you could also get a lot of impulsive choosing there. So when we first started out with AAC and EJ wanted to type the word am, let's say, he would end up doing American because as you can see, the first predicted word is American. So he would just continue typing that word. So you can, all of this defaults to not being there. The word prediction defaults to just not being there. So you can absolutely just leave that out. I put all 10 of those spots because EJ uses word prediction purposefully now. So it helps speed him up. Let's see. So if we go back, and now we're looking for adjectives. So now we're going to decide, like, let's say we do love again. The adjectives, interestingly, young, younger, and youngest show up. So in that situation, I would look at that because of the fact that she's holding a baby. That's probably why they decided that. So let's see what the nouns are. So the nouns are life. And you might be like, well, why wouldn't you put the noun under live for life, right? So it's not as much about us dissecting why. It's more about understanding that the way we retrieve words right now is a unique and consistent motor plan. It's just happening so fast with our articulators and everything when our brain sends signals. So we have an extra step here. Our brain's going to send signals to our hand and tell it where to go. So the idea is the students just learn. That's where I go for young. That's how I make young. That's how I make the sound and the word young. So live, the noun here is home. So now the little picture seems to make more sense. Oftentimes the pictures do make more sense with the nouns associated with them and the basic ideas. So under ride, you're going to get, thing, interestingly, but also you're going to get all your vehicles up here. And one of the nouns they have is vehicle. And so ride, you're going to get riding, all of that. You're also going to get verbs that have to do with that. like back, move, drive, front, fly. So because that
Flying.
has to do with vehicles. So I hope that makes a little more sense, but I do think it's important, the idea. So like if you look at this picture, somebody might be thinking to themselves, why in the world would get have a picture of a mountain with some snow and a sun? Because how is that get? Well, first of all, how many good pictures of the word get are there, right? So this actually gives you,
Nature.
and all this, flowers, trees. So your student is learning that motor planning. If that makes sense. So it's less about total. I'm kind of explaining some of the icons, but it's less about them being totally what is the word? Totally word for word, totally verbatim what they, they're appearing to be, and more about them being distinctive and you remembering where they are, and not just you for modeling's sake, but for the student. Okay. Questions?
None so far, but once you talked about how you want to think of it like apps on your phone, it totally clicked, because I know that I never read what my apps names are, but I can pick it out from like looking at it from afar away. You know how on an iPhone there's folders? I could see where my Facebook is, no problem, because I already know what that app is. So it totally makes more sense. And like going in and out, and the motor planning clicked.
Oh, good. So, but can you see why sometimes people look at LAMP and think, what the heck?
Yeah.
Because if you're used to PECS, which is the picture exchange system, or very categorical AAC, like I said, those are good, like very user-friendly for us as teachers, instructors, that kind of thing. But in the big picture, one of the things I realized was even to get to the word hat was 5 clicks in Proloquo to go.
Wow.
So I could spell the word hat in 3.
Yeah.
So it seemed very, very strange. Things like that. I mean, that's just one example. Of course, some words are very easy. And if that's a system that you like and works for you, then awesome. This is just one I feel like, especially if you're starting from scratch, first of all, you don't have to necessarily be able to say, this is this category, this is that category. You don't have to know those things, but it doesn't hurt to have them. Where in some of those other systems, you're kind of at a disadvantage if you don't understand each category and how that category breaks down. So to know that hat is under things, clothing, accessories, that sort of thing, that it's going deep. And what we want to do is, the idea behind LAMP is that nothing is more than 3 deep. So even when you're adding customization, you keep with the same idea. And that's why it's helpful to have someone that understands it in the beginning, but more and more. And I think anyone who's working with a student or a child using this, you just need to take that time and both of you explore. Even if you do hide some icons and start off with a smaller field, you want to babble with everything open, which means you and your child or student get to experience the whole vocabulary and explore with it. So like, for instance, people kind of would look at this picture of a little pot on a stove with a thermometer in it, and that says turn. So if you push on that and you go to the noun,
Dish.
It says dish. So actually this is giving you all an
Hot.
adjective, hot. This is giving you all your cooking stuff in here. Dishes, small appliances, large appliances. So where you might not be thinking, because we might just say my turn, or for like a book, you could say please turn, and you don't need to think to yourself, but that doesn't have to do anything with turning a spoon in a pot. So we're not going to go there. We're just learning where that is. But for the sake of knowing what's going deeper, it does help to kind of know some of the rhyme and reason behind it. But ultimately, it's not as much about what the symbols are as it is about learning the motor plans and using the word finder when we have it. So hopefully that gives a good kind of overview, especially since there's only like 2 more days of the sale. In case anyone is thinking about it, I do think it's good to have an idea of why this is a little bit different. Yeah?
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, cool. Thank you for being here, Christy. And people can just ask me questions whenever, post comments on this too. Okay, thanks. Bye.